When is The Elder Scrolls 6 going to take place? No, I don't mean when it's going to be released, I mean what time period in the Elder Scrolls universe will it be taking place in? That's the topic for today's video, and this is all complete speculation because honestly, it could kind of take place at any point, and that could very much differ depending on where in the world it's set, where in Tamriel, if it was set, say, in Valenwood or in Hammerfell, it could definitely lead to a different sort of time jump until the next game. And I'm gonna say right now that I think the game is going to take place after the events of Skyrim, and that's pretty much just to do with like all the other games before it. So you see like Arena that took place in the Third Era from over a 10-year period actually, from 389 to 399. Then you move over to Daggerfall, which was 3E405. Morrowind, once again 3E427. The events of Oblivion, which happened in Third Era 433. That did usher into the Fourth Era, though, which led to Skyrim taking place in the Fourth Era 201. So Skyrim was the biggest jump in a time frame since the previous game, and that's probably something we're going to see once again when the Elder Scrolls 6 is eventually released. I'm expecting it to take a bit of a bigger jump in time frames since Skyrim took place, and if we're going by my prediction as to where it's going to be set in, which I again think is Hammerfell, I think it'll be roughly 20 to 70 years in the future from the time period that Skyrim took place. And again, based on where the game takes place, that could totally throw all this out the window, and I'm not disputing that at all, but if it does take place in Hammerfell, which is my personal prediction, I'm assuming that it's going to still have something to do with the Thalmor and the Dominion trying to take control of everything, and as we learned in Skyrim in that time period, Hammerfell is one of the only places that isn't under direct Dominion control and control of the Empire. So if they were to ever set a game in Hammerfell, I think it would only make sense to try to involve the Thalmor somehow, or the Dominion, maybe the Empire trying to do a full-scale invasion of Hammerfell. We're not talking like a civil war like in Skyrim, I'm talking about like the Summerset Isles and the Dominion sending in all their troops to the coast of Hammerfell and having that big war be a huge part of the story in the game. You could have like one half of the map be entirely Imperial controlled, whereas the other half is the people, the Red Guards, trying to desperately fight for control of their own province. And if they were going to do something like that, it would need to be at least probably 5 to 10 years at the very least after Skyrim, because you need to see how the Civil War in Skyrim plays out, how that would affect the political intrigue in Hammerfell, and how that would affect their decision making as to whether they want to also fight against the Dominion. That would be affected by whether or not the Civil War in Skyrim was in canon successful or not, which we're going to find out if it takes place afterwards. Now that does kind of throw a wrench into the scenario though, because since the Civil War is kind of open-ended in Skyrim, they might want to set it far enough in the future that the outcome of the Civil War doesn't really have that much to do with anything, because it was like you get to choose what side you're on and how the Civil War goes. So instead of having to choose like a hard canon for who won it, they could easily set the game, say, 100 years in the future, where they could just kind of ignore the Civil War completely, never reference it again or anything, because that way they don't have to say, like, okay, this is actually how it went, and that choice that you made might be the opposite choice. No, that didn't actually happen. Not that it's a huge deal, unless the Civil War in Skyrim was a driving force for something in the main story of the next game happening, and if it's not, then the outcome of it doesn't actually really matter that much. Now, if we're talking about other provinces, say like Valenwood, which I think is another very good possibility, considering we had like what were possibly leaks back in E3 of last year, it wouldn't really matter as much as to how big the jump in the time frame was. Maybe they would want to get away from Valenwood being under Dominion control. You know, that might make a little bit more sense. So maybe they'll skip ahead like 100 years in that case or something like that. The same goes for a province like Elsweyr as well. I think it would make more sense to kind of get them less under Dominion control, and the big driving force for that is that the Thalmor were very much seen as the enemies in Skyrim, and players, when they're playing the game, they're going to be like, well, I don't want to be working for these guys that were trying to go and kill all the province that worshipped one god that we didn't like. And then that leads me to the Summerset Isles. Now, it's definitely a distinct possibility that the game could be set there. If that were the case, I think they would want to probably put it at least 200 years after the events of Skyrim, because in the events of Skyrim, the High Elves and the Thalmor and the Dominion were very much the bad guys, and that's not someone you want to be playing for or rooting for in that game. They could possibly do it where you're trying to uproot the Thalmor's influence over Summerset Isles, but I don't think that's going to be the case, and if they were to set the game there, it would really benefit them to put it either in the past, which I don't think is going to happen, or way in the future, at least 100 to 200 years or so. So those are my kind of thoughts and predictions on when I think the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to take place in the time frame of the Elder Scrolls series. Let me know what you think about it. When do you think it's going to take place? Where do you think it's going to take place? All that good stuff. Let me know down in the comments. I always read through all of them, and I reply to as many as I can. I'd really appreciate it. If you haven't already, we can always continue the discussion over on my Discord server as well. Feel free to join that. I've also got a Patreon going right now. If you're on VidMe, feel free to leave a tip. That would be super appreciated as well. IAmPattyJack. Link to all that stuff in the description, and I will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful day.
Shoot!